The story of Eden is often reduced to a simple moral failure, a broken rule followed by a punishment. But looking closer at the source text reveals a catastrophic epistemological fracture. When we rebelled, we triggered a disease of perception. A thick, obscuring veil dropped over the human mind, damaging our ability to see the world, each other, and the Creator with clarity. This diagram illustrates a noetic collapse. The nous is our spiritual perception, the interpretive faculty making sense of existence. In the original design, God served as the illuminated center. When we displaced God to define truth for ourselves, our spiritual orbits became chaotic and dark. By breaking our connection to the source of truth, we lost our compass. Humanity has spent the rest of history misreading reality and misinterpreting our own identity. This individual loss of sight scaled up into the corporate crisis of the Tower of Babel. Babel functions as a physical symptom of our diseased perception. Operating out of spiritual blindness, humanity attempted to manufacture a self-glorifying unity completely independent of God. God responded by fracturing human language and scattering the nations. He halted our arrogant ascent and forced a territorial division. Babel left the human race in a state of permanent cosmic exile. We became fragmented, divided, and trapped inside a distorted reality we could no longer navigate together. Acts chapter 2 describes a targeted divine counterstrike. The Holy Spirit arrived in Jerusalem to lift the veil of Adamic blindness and repair human perception at its source. We can see this healing happening in the text. Before the Spirit's arrival, the crowds looked at Jesus through a distorted lens, perceiving only a failed, crucified criminal. When the Spirit restores their clarity, their perception shifts. They finally recognize that same crucified man as the resurrected, enthroned Messiah. At Pentecost, restored sight allows humanity to accurately interpret reality and recognize the true King. Recognizing Jesus for the first time creates an immediate corporate crisis. The crowd is forced to choose a new allegiance. Peter commands the crowd to be baptized. This public, covenantal act marks the recognition of the true King. In this diagram of two kingdoms, baptism is the threshold. It's a definitive transfer of citizenship, exiting the old, blind humanity and entering the new. This allegiance triggers a Babel reversal. God restores understanding across languages without erasing cultural diversity. Restoring understanding, not forcing uniformity, Pentecost unites diverse nations, dismantling the ancient curse of Babel. This union forms a new humanity, a coordinated community acting as a single body rather than a loose collection of people. Under the Old Testament paradigm, sacred space was geographical. God's presence was localized inside physical buildings, like the tabernacle or the stone temple in Jerusalem. Pentecost reroutes the geography of the sacred. The fire of God's presence descends directly onto people, bypassing architecture entirely. This marks the permanent relocation of sacred space. The church has become the new, distributed, and mobile temple of God's presence on earth. To sustain this mobile temple, the early believers established a living infrastructure: teaching, fellowship, shared meals, and prayer. They understood that perception requires constant formation. Without the intake of truth, human understanding naturally drifts back into its default state of blindness. This community functioned as a school of perception. It provided an alternative interpretive framework designed to keep their vision sharp and their minds renewed. In a world still fractured by the legacy of Babel and blinded by distorted narratives, the church was designed as a unified people whose sight is fully restored, operating with clarity under the enthroned King.